Hey everybody, how's it going? I am your host Adrian, coming to you almost live from lovely Petaluma, California, here in Studio MC2 at Quicksurf Internet Studios. The Geekinator is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Do feel free to head on over to techpodcast.com. Check out all the other technology-related shows over there as well. I'd like to encourage everybody to visit us online over at quicksurf.com. Please do subscribe to the show if you have not already done so. You can find us online, not only over at the website, our website, quicksurf.com, but over at YouTube, Dailymotion, blip.tv, and Stitcher.com. On our website specifically, you can subscribe to an MP3 version of the show, an Ogg Vorbis version of the show, as well as a video version of the show. So definitely check that out. It's in the show notes for every episode under the subscribe heading. Before we get into the cool stuff I found for this episode, I just wanted to make a couple of minor announcements. The first being the show schedule has changed. We're still going to do twice a week, but I'm moving the days to recording Tuesday night, which is tonight, release Wednesday, and record Friday night, release Saturday morning. So Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, like, depending, we're Pacific time, so it'll be, midnight Pacific time. So it'll be, 3-4 hours, or if you're on the East Coast, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, or if you're, elsewhere in the world, time correct that. But that's the release schedule as it stands right now. And this is largely driven because a couple of reasons. I do the sister show to this, Linux News Log, Sunday night, and it was really hard for me to do two shows back to back, Sunday night and Monday night, A, and B, it was kind of, well, B, Mythbusters and a whole bunch of other Discovery shows that I want to see are going to be on Wednesday night starting May 1st. And so I can't watch my favorite shows. I know this is, whatever. Anyway, I can't watch my favorite shows if I'm recording the show Wednesday night. So I thought, well, if I do Tuesday night, Friday night, that will allow me to do kind of, we're a couple days in, I can do kind of a short show Tuesday night. And then Friday night, I can possibly do a slightly extended version, maybe out to 30 minutes or something like that. So we'll see how it goes. I'm still experimenting around. You can email me, geekinator@quicksurf.com, if you would prefer, if you've got feedback for me, by all means, send it. But anyway, I thought I'd make that announcement. Also, just for those of you who aren't Mythbusters fans, sucks to be you. Anyway, and also I've been fighting a cold for, almost a week now, and it won't go away, and I really wish it would. So let's go ahead and get into the stories for this episode. The first thing I ran across over at gearlive.com, Andrew Edwards, he's also a member of Tech Podcast. He's got a post here. This Seagate is now shipping their first 4 terabyte hard drive with 1 terabyte platters. That's right. You can now buy a 4 terabyte hard drive. Internally, it's only got 4 platters. Each platter is a terabyte. It's $189 on Amazon. It's a steal. It has to be a 4K drive or one of the advanced format drives to get that kind of aerial density. But pretty interesting. It's the world's first, well, what Seagate is saying is the world's first 4 terabyte hard drive to use 1 terabyte platter technology. It's 7,200 RPM, 64 megabytes of cache, which, if you ask me, they should have 256 megs of cache or something like that. And 146 megabytes per second is the transfer rate. Quite frankly, if it can transfer 146 megabytes a second, I would love to see a full second of buffer on there. So at least, 128 megs of cache, if not 256 megs of cache. That just, for the vast majority of things, having that much cache effectively, you want to you want to not have so much cache that if your drive loses power, it, fails. Like if you're writing, you don't get everything written, but you do want to have enough cache to where, a lot of SSD type stuff, you get a lot of SSD type speed for a lot of relatively small operations. So I'm curious to see, how much heat it produces and that sort of thing. This seems like a worthy upgrade. If you're looking to do, 3 of these, that's 12 terabytes of storage, or at least 8 terabytes of storage in like a RAID 5 configuration. So pretty interesting. Definitely check it out. From coolestgadgets.com, RC Wi-Spi Helicopter. That's right. Remember back in the days when everyone on the street had at least one remote controlled toy and you had to practically beg your parents to buy you one too? Well, now you won't feel quite so left out. For $169, you can get the RC Wi-Spi Helicopter. It's kind of cool. Basically, it's a remote controlled helicopter. It has its own camera and it's capable of transmitting live footage to a smartphone. So pretty neat. Definitely check this out. Obviously this is not a cheap toy. It's $160 some, but still nonetheless pretty interesting. I thought it was cool and thought I would include it. So over at Geeky Gadgets, the next generation Intel Thunderbolt technology has been announced. Now, obviously, when Intel first, when we first started hearing rumors of Thunderbolt way back in the day, back before, Macs had them, Intel was working on an optical version that was really super fast. And they ended up kind of, putting that on the back burner a little bit and coming out with a copper version that is the Thunderbolt that we know of today, particularly on Mac computers. Well, Intel is now, and that one is 10 gigabits each direction. Intel now has a new Thunderbolt interface that they are developing. It's a speed boost of double what it previously was, so you can get up to 20 gigabits per second. Pretty nice. It supports 4K video file transfer and display, and Intel has said that it's backwards compatible with the current version of Thunderbolt. So basically, it looks like you may have to have a cable that supports it, because we all know the Thunderbolt cables have electronics inside of them. But as long as you have a cable that supports it, you'll be able to, plug and play and, mix and match and get whatever speeds you're capable of. Very much like how FireWire works today. As long as you have a cable that works, FireWire 400, 800, 1600, is all fairly interchangeable. From MakeZine, BrickPi Controls Mindstorms Bots with a Raspberry Pi. That's right. This fits a Raspberry Pi into a little form factor that allows you to control Mindstorms robots. Dexter Industries builds LEGO Mindstorms add-on sensors and other compatible products, and their latest project, not yet completed, is the BrickPi. It allows the Raspberry Pi to control up to 3 Mindstorms motors and 4 sensors, but not the ultrasonic. The board's firmware is written in Arduino 1.0, so if you're interested in the source, check out the project's GitHub repository, which they have a link to. Sounds pretty neat. Definitely something to look into if you're into Mindstorms and doing all that cool stuff. From Read Write Enterprise, I saw this story that they had posted there, and quite frankly, I thought it was pretty neat. Well, not neat, but I thought it was interesting simply because I'm a programmer, and I know a fair amount of people in my audience are geeks, or they work in the technology field, or, write code for a living, or do it on the side as a hobby, or what have you. It's entitled 15 Programming Skills Most Coveted by Employers. Now, if you're currently unemployed and you're looking for a job, computer programmers are still, and will continue to be for quite some time, relatively in high demand. The 15th spot goes to Ruby, which at my current position, we've got some Ruby. The 14th spot is ASP.NET, which I've done a lot of ASP.NET in my day. Man, boy, did I ever. 13, Ajax. That kind of goes hand in hand with ASP.NET and doing web application development. 12, Objective-C. I actually don't have I have almost no experience in Objective-C, so that kind of interesting. 11, PHP. Oh yeah, I've done my fair share of PHP. Hang on a second here. Starting to sound froggier than usual. Number 10, Python. I actually have been exposed a little bit to Python. 9, Perl. Oh yeah, the Swiss chainsaw of programming languages is what they call it. Number 8, C. Boy, have I written a lot of C code way back in the day. And I went for quite some period, several years, where I did almost no C code. And then my current job, I've had to pick it back up again. 7, C#. I've done a fair amount of C#. 6, XML. Love XML. It's everywhere. If you don't know XML, you really need to. Number 5, C++. Done a bit of C++ myself. Number 4, JavaScript. This kind of goes in with the whole HTML web app stuff. Number 3, HTML. This, in my opinion, is essential. You've gotta have HTML skills. You need to know what the standards are. You need to be able to write standards compliant code. You cannot rely on an IDE that generates the code for you. The one thing that I can't stand about a lot of the younger programmers is they rely on, you know, libraries to generate all this HTML code for them. And C# does this a lot too, which, you know, a lot of ASP.NET applications are, you know, they make absolutely terrible HTML code. I mean, it renders, but when you actually look at the source, it is ugly. You need to be able to hand code HTML, because more often than not, you know, some simple little control isn't that some piece of code generates for you isn't going to do it. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into a situation where it's like, well, I really need it to do this. And you really have to be able to get in there and understand the code and be able to suss it out and tweak it to make it work for whatever it is that you're trying to do. Number 2, Java. Now, I, for the last several years, have been primarily a Java developer. And this, in my opinion, this is one of the languages, it's very C and C++ like, but this, and C# like, actually C# was, basically Microsoft's version of Java. But this is a language that you need to be at least familiar with, because there is a lot of Java code out there. And the number one language, and this is another thing that drives me absolutely nutty, because a lot of junior programmers are people who are, you know, don't want to be kind of multidisciplinary when it comes to programming. They don't want to learn this or that or whatever. And so they use libraries to do it. And it creates absolutely horrific, hard to maintain stuff. The number one language is SQL, Structured Query Language. If you're going to be writing code, particularly for web applications and that sort of thing, more often than not, the data that you're getting all your stuff from is a database. And you need to know how to craft SQL queries that are not going to tank your system. It's, you know, I mean, you got to have good data architecture, but you got to know how to write SQL queries. If you don't know SQL, you really need to learn it. I can't stand it when developers go and use some library. Oh yeah, like Hibernate in Java. I hate it. Anyway, something to keep in mind, you know, by all means, you know, if you're looking for a job, this is a good place to start. SQL and Java and HTML, JavaScript, and XML is a great place to start. PHP is huge if you're going to be doing a lot of web apps that run on Apache. Ajax is something you need to pick up, and then the rest of them, you know, ASP.NET, if it's a Microsoft shop, it's all probably going to be in ASP.NET and C#. But if they're kind of a LAMP stack, it's most likely going to be MySQL, PHP, or Python or Perl or something of that nature. You know, definitely need to pick up HTML and SQL, though, at an absolute minimum. JavaScript, you know, it's just one of those things. You got to do it. Definitely check the article out, though. I thought it was pretty neat. They do have a write-up for each of those languages. From New Scientists, there is over at newscientist.com, there's an opinion piece. It's called, "I'm Recording Everything for the First Living Archive." This caught my eye because you know, in my worldview, a diary of my life is not me sitting down and writing in a diary. A diary of my life is an archive, a collection of, you know, digital and real life, you know, what I call artifacts. So I have a digital documents project where I'm digitizing a lot of my stuff, and it all goes into my digital docs, my artifacts archive. And it's, you know, time delineated. And basically my diary is a collection of, you know, audio posts that I might record, a video, you know, an audio blog or video blog that I might record, emails that I receive and respond to, bills that I receive in the mail and pay. You know, there's, you know, stuff that I post online, stuff that I tweet, that sort of thing. You know, when you go and look at, you know, my archive, you know, to me, that is my life diary. And that's what this guy's kind of doing. So basically, sustainable architect William McDonough, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, he's recording every aspect of his working life for a comprehensive digital archive launched by Stanford University. And so basically what this is boiling down to is most of his meetings and speeches are being filmed, phone conversations recorded, they're dated and archived along with tweets, emails, physical drawings, and records. And they're basically trying to design this process so that his creative work is not disrupted, but they capture a lot of what he does on a day-to-day basis. That's what I've been doing for years, and which is why I have, you know, several terabytes of storage space. This stuff takes up space. You know, I'm all for sitting down and writing a blog post, but more often than not, you know, it's way easier for me to just simply grab my phone, hold it up, record something, save it, email it to myself. I have a special email address, a secret email address that I have set up that I can send stuff to, and that email address is things that gets sent into the digital archive. So, you know, among my normal emails, I forward stuff that I want to archive off as artifacts and that sort of thing. I do get a lot of digital mail, or a lot of you know, invoices and statements and that sort of thing via email. In addition to paper stuff, some of the paper stuff I've kind of held on to getting paper for some things, and simply because of the way, you know, they do offer it digitally, but the way they offer it, it's way more work than if I can just get it via email. And once I have it via email, then it's easier for me to just, I got something in my eye here. It's easier for me to just save it out as a PDF. I do everything as PDFs or as MPEG-4s or MP3s, that sort of thing. But pretty interesting nonetheless. Definitely read this article. I thought it was a pretty nice write-up, and I think it's where things are going to go eventually. A lot of it is just there needs to be some kind of workflow that allows us to capture and correctly catalog information so that we can, you know, revisit it later. Over at The Verge, it's theverge.com, California judge rules anti-texting laws also ban using a phone's map while driving. That's right. You should not be, and until Apple released Apple Maps and Google Maps, I don't really like that much. I actually like Apple Maps better than Google's new Maps app for iOS. But until Apple released their Maps application, you know, if I was in an unfamiliar place, and this happened a lot when I relocated to California from Phoenix, I would literally be, you know, driving and looking at my Maps app because I didn't know where I was going. And that's technically illegal according to the judge. Now, nowadays, what I do, since Apple Maps is here and on the 4S and on the 5, you get spoken directions. What I do is before I leave, I go look up, or I tell Siri where I want to go, and they start the turn-by-turn directions. I then take the phone, I turn it upside down so the speakers are facing up, and I stick it in my door jamb of my car, the door handle on my car. I just drop it right there so the speakers are facing up and I can hear the phone, and then I just follow the directions. I don't necessarily want to look at the display. I can certainly see maybe that has some value, but more often than not, you know, from my experience thus far with Apple Maps and their turn-by-turn directions, it's actually been quite good in terms of you know, making sure that you're notified that you need to turn left or right or whatever before you actually get to wherever it is you're going. So pretty interesting nonetheless. From Ars Technology, in their technology lab / information technology section, there's a story here. How important is it to reduce the number of lines of code? Is brevity the soul of good code? I don't agree with this. So there's a guy who posted here. He works in J2SE, which is basically Java. During code reviews, he's frequently asked to reduce his lines of code. It's not about removing redundant code, he writes. To his colleagues, it's about following a style, which is basically style over substance. And Kit says the readability of his code is suffering due to the dogmatic demands of his code reviewers. So how to find the right balance of brevity and readability? Now, I'm all for brief code. You know, I mean, there's no need to write, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 lines of code when 5 lines of code will do it. So there's certainly that aspect to it. However, with that being said, there's also no need to shrink code so much that it's hard to read. I've discovered over time that I would rather have, even though it's a little more code, or maybe it takes up a few more lines, it's not necessarily more code, but it's broken up over a couple of more lines. If it's more readable that way, that's how I would prefer to have it. So this asks the question, you know, and so basically you know, I thought it was an interesting write-up. Definitely check it out. That'll do it for this episode of the Geekinator. I realize we're running really long. We're right around 22 minutes or so. By all means, do go check us out online, and I will see all of you Friday night. We may actually push it to an even longer show, considering how much stuff I had to talk about on this episode. So with that, I'll see you then. Bye.